Okay, hello and welcome back to another tutorial. This is going to be part 2 of the Python series where I'm teaching you the basics and then building up to more complex things. And once we've covered all the basics, I can then have videos that are based on having a problem and solving that problem. The problems that I've been given at school for my programming, I can use those as the problems we have to work through. But for now, I need to teach you how to use more complicated stuff than last lesson. So last lesson was variables, if statements, how to make a function. But this one we're going to move on to lists and for loops, which you are going to have to use quite a lot, like a lot. So first of all, I need to teach what a list is because this is a beginner tutorial. I need to assume you don't know. So a list is a variable where you can have multiple data parts of data, pieces of data, whatever you want to call it, inside that list. So let's say last time we had a variable called name equals my name. There's no secret to what my name is. And then if we printed name, it'll do that. But so that prints the variable name, Nathan. Now we're going to have a list. So let's just call it names because it's going to be a list. You can have more than one. So names. And then for the sake of this, I'll just put that so I don't forget. Names, and now we're going to have a list. Now lists are inside square brackets just because they are. That's the syntaxing for them. And in here we put all the strings of names we want. So we're going to have one called Nathan, comma, one called David, comma, and we'll have one called Simon. We don't want a comma at the end. The comma suggests you're adding another one. Now, if I print names, it's going to print names, which is this whole list. So there's a list. But what if you only want to print a specific part in the list? So let's say you want the first one. Well, in programming, you start counting from 0. Every time you count in any program languages always starts from 0. So inside square brackets after names, you're referring to 0 in the list, element 0, which is the first one. So prints Nathan. If I change this to print 1 and to print 2, we get all of them. Boom, boom, boom. Now, adding loads of lines of print is going to be really just messy. And also, if you have more in the list, you want to print more, you're going to have to physically go in and add more. And it's not the best way to do it at all. So the best way is by using loops. Now, loops and lists go quite hand in hand. They go well together. So I'm going to clear out the list for now. So to make a for loop, you type for, and then you give a variable. So like a number, like last time you have like a variable equals a number. It's kind of like in massive algebra. You have like x equals 5, for example. So we're going to use I as the variable because, well, you can use anything you want, all right? Just whatever you put after the for is going to be the variable name to remember. I is used by most people. And then if you have another for loop inside a for loop, which is known as a nested for loop, you then use other characters than I. So you could use J. Most people go IJ. And then it's not often you have triple nested for loops, but I'm sure in really complicated things you will need that. And then you can use other letters. It really doesn't matter, as long as you don't use the same letter. So for I in range, and in the brackets here you put what it's going to go between. So it's going to go between 0, because that's the first value. Obviously, if you wanted to start a loop further into a list, you wouldn't put 0, you'd put wherever. But we're going to start from 0, and we're going to go to len, this is going to give out a number. So it's the length of names, okay? So as you see, 0 is the first comma, and then behind in this comma here, it's another number, which gets how many elements are in this list. So this will change depending on how many things you got in here. And after the for loop, whatever you do is going to happen that many times. So for I in range thingy, print I. Now, I starts off at 0, does the loop, does all the code inside this loop, like all the blah, 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 blah. And then it goes back and starts again from here. And when it starts again, that I variable will have gone up by 1. Now, in other programming languages, you type like for int I is less than 10 I++. Now, it's a lot simpler in Python, just I in range and then the range. So how about we print I? Now, nothing's going to happen here. The reason being, because it's between 0 and 0, because there's nothing in the list, it's not going to happen. So let's add a name, Nathan. Now, it doesn't matter what I added in there, but now because it's got something in the list, it prints 0. If I had another thing, it would print 0, 1. Because what it's doing is it's printing I, which is 0. There's another thing in the list, so that can go between 0 and 2. So then it does it again. Now, if you wanted to actually print the amount of elements in the list, you would do I plus 1 because, because it starts from 0, but if you wanted to kind of get the actual value that it is, you would put plus 1. So not for positions, but let's say, for example, you checked how many things are in a list by the position or the length of it. You might have to add 1 or take 1. It really depends on how you've got your list and how you've gone through the loop. But we'll instead print names, and in the bracket, instead of putting an actual number, we'll put I, which is a number. I is a number. It's the number, which is however many times we've done the loop. So it's going to print names I, which is 0. Do it again, print names I, which is 1. So it's going to print that. So Nathan, Simon. And if I add more now, so now when I add more things to the list, James, I don't have to change this code, this loop. It already knows to do it the amount of times that the list has. So you don't have to go in and change and add more prints. It just does it for the length of the list. Now let's say we wanted to make it a bit nicer. So hello space plus names. Hello Nathan, hello Simon, hello James. So now you've got like automated outputs just from knowing which names you take in. And the last thing I'm going to show you in this video is how to take input in to affect lists. So now names is gone. We'll make names actually, but we'll leave it empty. It's an empty array that's been declared. And now we're going to take in an input. So we'll have how about we'll have an int input how many people. Obviously, you write what you want in there, and we'll just have number of people equals that. So it's going to ask for an input, and that's going to give you a number of people. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do for I in range. Now I can reuse I because after the loop's finished, I is gone. It only is I for the loop. So I can have multiple loops with I. So for I in range, 0, comma, number of people. So that's going to be whatever value they put in there. Colon. And we'll take name equals string input. If this is going too fast, I'll explain in a second. Enter name. Okay. And then we can do names.append. This is all stuff I've already covered, but I can go over if you want in a second. Let's see what happens now. How many people? 3. Nathan, David, Simon. Hello, Nathan, David, Simon. Okay, that works. So now I can explain it. So, an empty array called, an empty list called names. We get a number. This variable number of people is whatever they enter in. So if I enter in there's 5 people, this will be 5. Then it loops between 0 and 5 in this case. And then every time I do it, it makes a variable called name, which is whatever the name I enter is, and it adds name to this list. And because I put in 5, it will then run the same thing. New name is enter name, adds to the list. So after this loop, this list is full of all the names I've entered in. And then it moves on to this list. For I in range 0, length of name, so for 0 to however many names I've entered, print hello, and then the name of that person in the list, then it does it again and does the next person. So I'll leave the code on screen. I'm sure this makes sense to you. So I could do 10, and I can just do obviously, I can't actually be odd. There we go. They're all S. It does it 10 times. Now, one thing I'll cover in the next tutorial is what happens if you put in, like, whoops, what did I just press? I don't know. So if you enter 5 or 4 and you don't enter anything, it doesn't do anything. Now, usually, maybe, because it's taken in a string input, even if I leave it blank, it takes the blank character as a string. And even if I put numbers for the people, it counts numbers as a string. The problem's when you try and check for like a number and you don't enter anything. Blank isn't a number, it isn't even 0, it's just a blank space is nothing. Also, if you enter something outside of a range, it also causes problems. So there's a lot of exception handling stuff that I'll go into. But for now, this is how you make a list by having a, you declare how long the list is. You put all the things in the list, and then you print a response depending on the list. So this is a cover of lists and functions, lists and loops. It doesn't really get more complicated than that. when it comes to loops, though lists can get quite complicated when you have multiple dimensional lists. So at the moment, this is a single 1D, one directional array list where you have a value, comma, a value, comma, a value. But then you can have two-dimensional arrays where where each value has its own value. So like you can have like names and addresses in a list. So you can have like person 0, instead of just having like here we have like names I, you could also have like names I plus 1. You can have like, you can go further into the list. You can do, I'll cover that in more complicated tutorials where it comes up in a problem, but for now that's simply how you do it. And I hope this video was a good help. I'm just going to run that and leave that there. Maybe I'll just put in free Nathan, David, Simon. Anyway, oops. Okay, I hope that helped. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.